Hello, everyone out there in music land. How is it going? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Um, Let me just. Okay, yeah. So welcome to another news episode of Yesshift. Again, it's just me for this one because of scheduling. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about. There are some albums I want to review. There's a concert I went to last night that I want to talk about. And yeah, there's just like so much to talk about. Like I was reviewing the news items for this one and I was like, "Oh wow, that's a lot." And just had to get it organized to get this set up. And I'm very excited. Also very excited about an interview that we have with a certain someone tomorrow, Monday, September 18th, 11 a.m. Pacific. So that's 2 p.m. Eastern US time and 7 p.m. UK time. And if you follow the Facebook page, you'll already know who it is. But yeah, I'll just leave that as a tease for now and mention it again at the end. And if I'm looking at my phone, it's because I'm trying to share this around to all the different groups. So, yeah, how's everyone doing? Also, this is a big week because on Tuesday is when the Classic Tales of Yes tour begins. Now, we've speculated and seen hints of what the set list might be. I'm not going to go into that here because we're so close and might as well just like let it unfold, and then we'll hear about what happens like as far as the song selection choices. But yeah, I'm very excited and I'm gonna try to see Yes on this tour. um yeah, from the looks of it, they begin the tour Tuesday in Lilletz, Pennsylvania, and then that goes up to November 4th, over in Riverside, California. So they'll be in my state toward the end of this US tour. So very exciting stuff. I'm very curious to see what they end up doing. I'm sure there are already people in the know by now. But yeah, so first off, um, yeah, I'll just leave that at that. And the first thing I want to review is uh, John Lodge's new album, Days of Future Past, My Sojourn. So, just gonna give you a little taste of peak hour from that album, so hopefully you'll be able to hear this well enough. Yeah, it's very upbeat, very fun. So let me just open up my notes. Um, well, first off, there's this press release which I'll go over and read through real quick. So, John Lodge, legendary bass player, songwriter, and vocalist of the Moody Blues, has announced that following the phenomenal response to his USA July Days of Future Past tour and fans' reactions to the studio recording of this album, Days of Future Past, My Sojourn, will now be released in the UK on September 22nd. The album is released through Keeping the Faith Records and is distributed by Absolute. A special limited edition red gold 180G vinyl will follow on November 24th. The album was recorded over the last year. It has grown from John's current live show as he and his 10,000 Light Years band lovingly recreate this classic album. The album features a special recording by the late Graham Edge and performances by John Davison of Yes. It is being released as part of John's celebration of the album that changed his life, and with the hope that it will continue to introduce fans to the original iconic recording. The album's orchestration is by Jon's long-term collaborator and great friend Alan Hewitt. And there's a video for Peak Hour, which of course I played a bit of just now. The original album, released in 1967, came about when Decca were exploring stereo and full frequency sound and wanted the band to put the melodies of Dvorak's New World Symphony to lyrics to make a sampler album. However, the Moody's decided to follow their own path, and the result was a groundbreaking concept album that can be said to be the start of progressive rock. The original orchestration has been recreated by Jon and his band, and the end result is absolutely essential for Moody's fans. That's Lee Zimmerman Goldmine quote from Goldmine magazine, I assume. The CD and Digipack will be available from September 22nd, and the vinyl will follow on November 24th. The cover features a poignant photograph of Jon and his wife, Kirsten, taken by his daughter-in-law, Inga Lodge. For Jon, this was an image that perfectly encapsulated the idea of past and future and what this album means to him. And there's a quote from him. Let's see. After my days of future past tours in February, March, and July of this year, I was blown away by the reaction of everyone to my new concert, and the fans' response to my version of the album had changed my life. I'm delighted that we are now realizing this in the UK and making it available to all. I am hoping that this will bring a new generation of listeners, that they may then rediscover the original recording and beautiful vocals of Mike Pinder, Justin Hayward, Ray Thomas, and myself. I miss the Moody's, but I'm so grateful to the fans who have continued to support me and give me the opportunity to continue doing what I love. I dedicate this album to Graham, Justin, Mike, and Ray, to Tony Clark, and to all the fans that are with me on this, my sojourn, no matter when you joined. So, yeah, this was a really great listen. I was sent a download to listen to in advance so I could review it. So this album, chime in if you're familiar with the original album, because it really is a classic. I listened to the Moody Blues, went through their discography, and that must have been back in 2009. Wow, such a long time ago. And let's see. Yeah, 2019 was when the Row Affair tour, which this shirt that I'm wearing, it's got John Lodge of the Moody Blues. So I was able to see him perform there. And it was a lot of fun. I was really impressed by that concert. It was such a great lineup, but even just John Lodge and his band, and John Davison guesting as well. And of course, John Davison is now his son-in-law. He married John Lodge's daughter, Emily, some time ago, several months ago, I think. So, yeah, I gave this album a listen. It's divided into, if you're familiar with the album, it's divided into parts of the day. So let me just look at my notes. So the day begins, you got this enigmatic intro, and it slowly builds and gets more dramatic and cinematic. The orchestration does such a huge, it feels such a huge, it feels like an essential space, adds another dimension to this whole thing. And then you get Morning Glory, where it's got that majestic morning feeling, and then you have these preludes to some of these songs. They're very short orchestral bits. So you got Dawn prelude, and then you got Dawn as a feeling. It's very melodic, great lyrics, and I love how the lyrics are sung. Then you get the morning prelude, again, wonderful orchestral bit. And which leads into Another Morning, and this feels like a more upbeat, triumphant morning. It reminds me a bit of the feel of Jingle Bells, so it kind of got me in a festive mood listening to that. And I was listening to this in the morning, actually, yesterday, I believe, and it was a nice way to start the morning, really. A lunch break is very brief but whimsical. It kind of feels like an instrumental passage in a musical. And yeah, it's got that feeling, where it makes you want to like, ugh, like it. I, I don't know. I know some people aren't that into musicals, but I, I like some of them, and this kind of remind me of some of the musicals that I like. Peak Hour, which again I played earlier, the drums kick things into high gear, and it's got this operatic sounding organ bit. And again, it's very catchy, Peak Hour, do 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 do. And then you get Tuesday Afternoon, which John Davison guests on. And on this one, he may perhaps not sound as recognizable at first to Yes fans. So I feel like it kind of shows what more John Davison is able to do. I love his singing in Yes, but this kind of shows, I feel, another side of what he can do. And then it gets very bluesy toward the end of that song. So again, like this album has some nice flavors to it. And hey, I guess bluesy is fitting since it's moody blues. Then we have Evening, which begins on haunting notes, like haunting sounding notes, but gets more calming as it progresses. Again, I love when there are these different changes in moods. Hey, moody blues. They got Sunset Prelude, very majestic orchestral bit, which then goes into the Sunset, which sounds very enchanting to my ears. And then we got Twilight Time Prelude, which I believe is the shortest track on this album, which then leads into Twilight Time. Again, another great piece, very melodic. They get Nights in White Satin. John Davison returns on this one again. This version definitely, it feels so transcendent. It's just so great, and you get the majestic orchestral bits again. Then we get Laid to Lament, which sounds ponderous. The notes, the way they come down, kind of feel to me like dripping water. We also get Spoken Word bit by Graham Edge, who also appeared earlier on track 2, I believe. And then we get the Night Finale, which closes out the whole thing magnificently. It even has a gong at the end, so there's a nice flavor there. So yeah, this album is very symphonic, makes great use of the orchestra, and it's a nice way to sort of redo a classic album. It's not just re-recording it's not trying to sound exactly like what came before, but it feels very fresh to me, like the way that's done here. So yeah, John Lodge, Days of Future Past, My Sojourn, I definitely recommend. So go give it a listen whenever it's available. So yeah, it comes out this Friday, and very exciting stuff. All right, so let me just check the comments real quick, see if anyone's chimed in. Hopefully there's like not too much background noise. There's a lot of stuff going on outside. Okay, so this next thing I want to review is Steve Hackett Foxtrot at 50 plus Hackett highlights live in Brighton. So this got released last Friday, and last year saw the release of another live album called Genesis Revisited, Seconds Out, and more, and that was such an amazing listen. We were sent the download of that back then, and it was such a great illustration of the live show then. And this one is as well for this particular tour. And I've actually went to Brighton when I studied abroad a few years ago, so I have a soft place for Brighton. So just looking at the press release that came out for Live in Brighton, Legendary guitarist Steve Hackett presents his brand new live audio-visual extravaganza with the release of Foxtrot at 50 plus Hackett highlights live in Brighton out now. To celebrate, a clip of the track Can Utility and the Coastliners has been released, and you can see it now. It's on YouTube, and there are also a couple other videos that came out for that album. Let's see, which ones were they? Okay, yeah, there's Watcher of the Skies, and there's another one, I'm pretty sure. Well, you can check those out at the Inside Out Music YouTube channel. But getting back to the press release, Steve comments, Foxtrot was a milestone for Genesis, a breakthrough artistically. I'm as proud of it today as I was at its inception. I'm thrilled now to bring that album back in its entirety on tour, and the live release has super quality performance, visual, and production. It's a real feast and joy. Filmed and recorded live on his 2022 UK tour in the coastal city of Brighton, the UK. This release documents Steve and his band celebrating the 50th anniversary of the much-loved Genesis album, Foxtrot. Played in full, this album features fan favorites including Watcher of the Skies and Supper's Ready. The show also features a set of Hackett's solo material, including The Devil's Cathedral from his latest studio album, Surrender of Silence, and the powerful Ace of Wands. So this was also mixed by Chris Lord Alge and mastered by Ted Jensen at Sterling Sound. The album is now available on 2 CD Blu-ray and 2 CD plus 2 DVD, both including bonus behind-the-scenes interviews as well as 5.1 surround sound, and limited deluxe 180G 4LP edition will also be available. So yeah, this was another great listen, like I said. We got the download sent to us for this. The lineup. So Steve Hackett is joined by Roger King. Need to drink a bit of water. Rob Townsend, Nad Sylvan, Craig Blundell, and Jonas Reingold, as well as an occasion special guest, Amanda Lemon. All right, so just looking at my notes for this one. Let's see. Yeah, I listened to this the other day and took notes for my reactions to each song. So Ace of Wands hits the ground running with instrumental interplay, and Steve even jokes about Foxtrot being obscure, which is pretty funny. The track ends with him explaining the next track after this one, Devil's Cathedral. You know, a wonderful track from a wonderful album. His most recent album, Surrender of Silence, like mentioned earlier. And this kind of made me wonder, like, you know, explaining the song, which is the next song, it's, when you think about it, it's a bit odd to, like, it's a general practice, like, it's not just this, like, it's been done on things like Yes shows and such, but explaining the context for the next song, and then you would think that the explanation would be on the track that is that song, but structurally, I do understand how when you're going to different tracks, like maybe if you want to skip to a certain track, you might want the song to begin right away rather than the explanation be there for a bit of the start and it taking a little while to get to the song. So I kind of do understand that practice. It just, I don't know, it's just something I kind of thought about. But in any case, Devil's Cathedral is amazing. It has a nice mingling of organ and saxophone sounds. It's amazing. And there's some nice bass licks as well. It's a great song and really great taste of that album. So I definitely highly recommend those. And then we get Spectral Mornings, which contrasts with Devil's Cathedral in that it is more serene. So I guess you could say it's a nice little palate cleanser there. And then after that, we get Every Day, which is very upbeat and I would say a nice way to start the day. Just give that a listen. And then we get A Tower Struck Down. Oh, I think that's the other one that got a video put on YouTube. And if you look at these videos, they're very high quality. They're so good. This one kind of reminds me of ELP's The Barbarian in its tone. So it kind of gave me that nostalgia feeling because The Barbarian was the first Emerson, Lake and Palmer song I ever heard, the very first track. And it really, back in 2008, when I first listened to that, really set the tone for what I was into. But that's not to say A Tower Struck Down isn't its own thing. It's a really great song. Then we get a bass solo expertly played by Jonas Reingold, so it's a nice little detour that shows off his skills. It's odd that the applause aren't audible until the beginning of the next track. Like, the track kind of ends with him finishing the solo, and then the next track, Camino Royale, begins with the applause for that solo. So I don't know. I feel like if it were me, I would put the applause at the end of the bass solo track, but hey, it's just a little thing. But on Camino Royale, Rob Townsend's playing complements Nad Sylvan's singing very well. Again, this is a very top-notch band that Steve Hackett has with him. We actually interviewed him as well as Craig Blundell for Drum Talk TV last year. That was a lot of fun. It was really nice guys. And then we got Shadow of the Hierophant. This is another one that was on Seconds Out and More last year. There are a few tracks that overlap with these live albums, and they both sound great on both of these live albums. Amanda's singing and folksy feel are a nice juxtaposition with the heavier moments in this one. And then we get Watcher of the Skies, very energetic as ever. And then Timetable, soothing piano sound at the start, and very melodic vocals. So again, like this album showcases Steve Hackett solo songs as well as Genesis, celebrating the Foxtrot album. We get Him Out by Friday, which maintains a very whimsical feel throughout. Then we get Can Utility and Coastliners. It's got elongated vocal notes that are very impressive, and there's great interplay throughout. And then there's Horizons, a wonderful classical sounding guitar solo piece. And again, Steve Hackett's playing all throughout this album. It's incredible. It's fantastic. And then Supper's Ready. I bet this is one that lots of people listening to this are gonna be like, oh, I can't wait to get to this epic. And it is epic as ever. It's so well done. Then we got Firth of Fifth, very groovy, has those nice alien sounding sounds at one point. And the audience claps along during the keyboard bit. So again, we get an illustration of what the live feel is. On the studio tracks, I love studio versions of the songs, but in the live setting, you get a feel of how the audience reacts, and it's just, you get a nice taste of each of those worlds, And there's an amazing drum solo at the end of that one. And then closing out this live show is Los Endos, very jazzy and fantastically free, if that's the right word. Like, it's, yeah, I can't say enough great things about this release. Like, definitely check it out, and check out the one from last year as well if you haven't already. I just love that Steve Hackett's continued doing this, and it's like lots of great content. Like, this is the stuff that resonated with people in the 70s, and it still resonates with people now. It's just, I can't say enough great things. Okay, let me see if there are any more comments before I move on to this next thing. This next item here. Okay, so I see that people are watching, so okay. So taking a little break from new releases, I actually want to talk about the Kansas concert that I went to last night. So this was at the Orpheum Theater in Los Angeles, and it's a really nice looking venue. Uh, like if you know, it's I wish I knew how to describe it very well, but it's a really cool looking venue. I got a seat in the balcony area, and in Kansas, of course, Tom Brislin has been the keyboardist of the band for years now, and we actually interviewed him earlier this year, back in February, I think it was. And my dad interviewed Phil Ehart, drummer for Kansas, back in December, I believe. Yeah, I think it was in December. So the current lineup is doing such a great job, carrying forward. Um, and I actually have the set list written on my phone. This was a show that lasted a little more than 2 hours. I think it was 7:40 when they started, and then it was like 9:49 when I checked my phone as I was leaving. So yeah, a little more than 2 hours. I was kind of surprised that there was no intermission, because I'm so used to having intermissions for concerts like these, for Yes, if it's a full Yes show, or maybe there will be support bands, like there will be intermissions between each of the acts. But no, there was no intermission here. They just played the whole set like straight through. So that was kind of surprising. So the set began with Belex's from, I hope I pronounced that right, from the first Kansas album. It really got things going, really set the tone. There's a bit of singing that kind of reminded me of Spirit of Survival from Magnification, which is kind of funny because Tom Brislin was involved with Yes on the tour after that. So, and then we get to Point of No Return. So, another classic, like even casual fans, I guess you could say, are very familiar with that song. And then they went into the 80s for a little bit, playing Play the Game Tonight from Vinyl Confessions, and then Fight Fire with Fire from Drastic Measures. I think they were even like, you remember MTV? And, it's just kind of funny the way MTV has changed so much since then. And then they played both Icarus songs. They played Icarus Born on Wings of Steel from the Mask album, and then Icarus 2 from Somewhere to Elsewhere from 2000. So quarter century between each of those two different Icarus parts being released. Really nice that they put them back to back for this 50th anniversary set. Then they played A Glimpse of Home from Monolith, and then The Pinnacle from Mask, and then Throwing Mountains from their most recent album, The Absence of Presence, which is where Tom Brislin joined the band. I kind of wish, like, if there was one thing I wish from the set list, it's that I kind of wish there was a bit more of Absence of Presence representation, but as it is, with Throwing Mountains, that's a really great track right there. Then we got People of the South Wind from the Monolith album. And then before Dust in the Wind, they were kind of recounting the story of how it went down, the plucking of strings. And like, I knew this was going to be that song, but when they started playing it, like how people remember, like, the beginning of Dust in the Wind, there's a huge like cheering, and people cheered at the end of each of these songs. The band is very tight, the violin, drumming, like just all of it. Tom Brislin was like very energetic. Sometimes he'd be like slapping the keyboard like effortlessly and just moving around and playing all the notes. But yeah, Dust in the Wind, I was singing along a little bit to that one. And then after that, Reason to Be from the Monolith album. So yeah, there's a quite a bit of Monolith representation at the show. And then of course, representation from the first Kansas album as well. They were talking about how Lonely Wind was perhaps the most important Kansas song, and it's from their first album. So they played that next. And then they played a Song for America. Now, up until this point, like before Song for America, the drummer for the show was Eric Holmquist, who's been the band's drum tech for 20 years. Because Philly Hart last year sprained his arm. So on Song for America, Philly Hart came on the stage and started playing the drums. And I thought he was just going to do this song. And like, what a way, like, what a song to play on. Like, to me, like, I'm not a drummer, but it looks like a challenging song to play drum wise. Like, it's very big sounding, and yeah, Phil did such a great job on that. But then he didn't leave the stage. He played the rest of the set. And looking back, like, I thought that he played like the second half of the set, but looking at the number of songs, I'm like, oh, he played the last third of the set. But it feels like he played the second half. You know, both Eric and Phil have these huge presences, and like they both shone on their respective parts on the set. So yeah, Philly Hart drummed for the rest of the set. So after Song for America, they played Can I Tell You from the first Kansas album, and then Hold On, and not to be confused with the Yes song. This actually came out 3 years before the Yes song on Kansas's Audio Visions album. And then the next song they dedicated to the late Robbie Steinhardt. This is from the Song for America album. It's Down the Road. And yeah, it was really nice that they dedicated it to him. When my dad and I had producer Michael Franklin on our show recently, we talked a little bit about Robbie Steinhardt's album that was made before he passed, Not in Kansas Anymore. And it's such a great listen. All of you should check it out if you haven't already. And yeah, just tipping the hat to people like him and, you know, Steve Walsh, you know, talking about the history of the band in between songs. And yeah, you know, like it's the 50th anniversary, like you gotta do that, you know. And then we got The Wall, not the Pink Floyd The Wall, but from the Leftoverture album. And again, so good. It felt kind of like a mini epic. I don't remember how long the song is, but you know, the twists and turns of it, it felt kind of like a mini epic to me. And then we got Miracles Out of Nowhere from Leftoverture. And I knew what the encore would be like going in to this. I think everyone knew it was Carry On Wayward Son. Like everyone was standing up and applauding and cheering, and you know, just, you know, this is their roundabout basically. Yeah, and they at the end they're like, LA, you've been so good, you're coming with us to our next show in San Diego, we're gonna need a bigger bus. And it's just really funny that they said that. But yeah, it was such a great, energetic concert, so expertly played. And for context, the only Kansas albums I listened to beforehand, so in like 2009 or maybe 2010, maybe it was 2010, I listened to the first few albums up to Point of No Return, and I was going to continue, but then some other stuff, I guess, got in the way. But I remember somewhere around that time listening to a Rockline interview, and a caller asked, "Are you guys gonna play stuff from the Monolith album again?" And that title just kind of stuck with me over the years. And so, you know, I in anticipation for this concert, I thought about going through the whole catalog, but instead I only made time to listen to Monolith, and of course I listened to Absence of Presence a couple times over the past couple years to see how Tom Brislin contributed, like what he added to the catalog there. It's such an amazing album, my favorite of the Kansas albums I've heard. But yeah, I listened to Monolith before going to this concert, and I was surprised that there were quite a few songs from that album that got representation there. So yeah, and like the lighting and just how it all looked, like everyone was in top form. It was so amazing. And they recently extended their 50th anniversary tour into 2024, apparently. So people can go to kansasband.com and look up the tour dates there. So, yeah, I don't know what more to say about the concert. It was so epic. And I think I got a feel of what it must be like to be a Yes fan who's only listened to a few albums and maybe knows a few songs really well and hasn't listened to many of the others. Like people like me have listened to every Yes album and just know them so well. But with this Kansas concert, I was not as familiar with all the material. So I feel like, and it's a prog rock band. So I kind of feel like I got a feel of what it must be like to be a Yes fan who's less familiar and going into the concert not having so many expectations for the set list of what they want apart from maybe a few familiar things. um I guess I kind of got that feeling from the Seal concert I went to earlier this year as well, but like this was more prog rock, and yeah, it was an interesting feeling there. All right, so let's see what's next on the agenda. All right. Oh, so yeah. Another thing that came out recently was Flower King's album "Look at You Now," and me and my dad interviewed Royna Stolt on our show about a month ago now. Wow. So it was really cool hearing him talk about the album, and we talked about a couple of the songs. But I listened to the album on release day, and it's really good. You can sort of see how the Flower Kings sound. I've only listened to the first few albums and this most recent one. Again, that's another thing where I want to go through the entire Flower Kings discography, but I want to pace myself and not get burnt out so quickly. I want to like really savor each of these. But yeah, Look at You Now is another great one. Feels very Flower Kings, but also feels very now. I'd say the title track is probably my favorite on that album, but I might have to give it more listens to see if like anything changes. But yeah, the title track is kind of a mini epic. It's 11 minutes and has these twists and turns and sounds very heavenly and also really goes into different things. So yeah, definitely check out that album. But yeah, like I said, the Flower Kings, like when you get an idea of what their sound is like, you can see what Royna Stolt brought into that Anderson Stolt album, Invention of Knowledge. Because like in hindsight, some of that sounds very Flower Kings, which makes sense because he's been in Flower Kings for so long and he's on that. So yeah, so go check out that album. And again, also check out Down's Braid Association Celestial Songs, which I reviewed a few weeks back. And speaking of Downs, he appeared on Meddle Reimagined. So this is another tribute album from Cleopatra Records. You could give this a listen on their Bandcamp. But yeah, this is a Pink Floyd tribute album. Metal, another classic album, this one from the early 70s. Jeff Downs is featured on One of These Days alongside Steve Stevens, Bootsy Collins, and Carmine Appice. A Pillow of Winds features James Labrie, Martin Barr, Derek Sherinian, and Alan Davey. Fearless features Mark Stein, Helios Creed, Bob Daisley, and Rat Scables. Or maybe it's Scabbles. Oh, Scabbies. Scabies. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing, but one of those is bound to be correct. And then Rick Wakeman is on San Tropez, and as well as Graham Bonnet, Chris Poland, Joe Bouchard, and Dave Lombardo. They're all on that. And then Seamus includes Terry Reid and Brian Auger. And Echoes, The Epic. Like, this was the one I was most looking forward to. Like, so far, the songs were played very well, but Echoes, it's peak Pink Floyd. Like, it's one of their, I guess you could say it's one of my favorite Pink Floyd songs. It's so epic, it's over 20 minutes, so go figure. Features Frank Dimino, Dweezil Zappa, Jordan Rudess, David J, and Pat Mastelotto. And it was so expertly done. And it really says something when you listen to a well done tribute album and it reminds you of what you love of the band that they're paying tribute to, and it makes you feel, oh, I want to go back to the Pink Floyd catalog. Like, that really says something. So yeah, I thought this was another great release. And also coming from Cleopatra Records this Friday, I believe, the 22nd, is the Fernando Perdomo fronted Fusion Syndicate album. Let's see, I think it's called a trip. Yeah, Speedway on Saturn's Rings. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, you got Billy Sherwood on a few tracks, and Rick Wakeman is on IO. Yeah, I've talked about this on a previous episode, but just I'll remind people that this is coming out. So yeah, I'm really digging like the stuff that's coming out. Let's see, another thing on Bandcamp. So there's this European band called Yesterdays, and they're releasing a live album called A Moonlit Night in Budapest. So this also comes out this Friday, the 22nd, and it features Peter Banks. Like, there's the track 7, which you can listen to on their Bandcamp, along with the song Willow. But at the end of the track titled 7, you hear Peter Banks talking a bit and complimenting the band. So it's a nice archival release. We get more of Peter himself. So I really like that we're getting this. There's another archival thing that came out recently on the Midnight Special YouTube channel, and this is Peter Banks's band Flash performing Psycho Sync. So the video was posted recently on Midnight Special YouTube channel, and it's in such good quality. I'm really glad that this surfaced now. And just as a reminder, there's a documentary that's been in the works called Claiming Peter Banks, and there are lots of people involved. You can see the whole list at supposableproductions.com/claiming-peter-banks, and you can donate. Like, this project needs some funding in order to be completed, and like lots of us really want to see this documentary. It's Peter Banks, the original Yes guitarist, even gave them their name. He came up with the name Yes, and really should have been more popular with all the skills that he had. And he was in Flash, Harmony in Diversity, and he had a great solo album that I've listened to one solo album by him back in 73, so it's 50 years old this year, huh? Yeah, Two Sides of Peter Banks. And yeah, we really need this documentary that tells his story. So Claiming Peter Banks, like, the late great guitarist. So yeah, go to supposableproductions.com/claiming-peter-banks and see what you can donate. All right, let me check the comments again. Oh, my dad is chiming in saying, what up? Yeah. So, yeah, I guess he has this on while he's doing some work. All right. Oh, he also said the new Flower Kings album is a great album. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't aware that you listened to it, but yeah. Okay, so the next item here, uh, I think last week, Roger Dean and Freya, his daughter, they posted a Q&A video, so it was nice to see a conversation between them again. I think they're getting back into the swing of doing this sort of thing. And we've talked about their art on here before. They both have such amazing pieces and they have such great insights about art. I think Roger was asked an interesting question of when does he have the idea for the concept of an album cover, and like does the music affect it? Like I think he talked about something to that effect, like what his process is like on the most recent Q&A. So yeah, go check out that on the Roger Dean Facebook page, and scroll through and see all the artworks on his page and on Freyja Dean's page as well. There's lots of great stuff there. All right, I'm just gonna take a sip of water before moving on to this next thing. Okay, so where are we? Oh, Bill Bruford had lunch with District 97 drummer Jonathan Shang in London. So there's a nice picture of that shared on the District 97 Facebook page. And Bill, his YouTube channel has been very prolific, posting at least one thing a week, I think. Curating some archival stuff and yeah, lots of great stuff. So let me just skim like what's come out recently. So we've got King Crimson, Vroom / Coda, Marine 475, live at the Warfield, Earthworks, Bajo del Sol, live in Santiago 2002, another Earthworks one, Nerve, live in Tokyo. Oh, you got ABWH's Roundabout from an evening of Yes Music Plus. And Bill recently thanked people for the 60,000 subscribers. We also got King Crimson, Matt Kudasai, The Noise live at Freyja's 1982, Bruford Borstlap, Happenstance, King Crimson, Thrack live 1995. So yeah, there's lots of great stuff here. I like that he's, this has continued to be a nice library of pretty much all of Bill Bruford's appearances, and there's lots of them, so it's bound to get even more full. Oh, Dad chimed in saying, I think we did a thing on Roger Dean and Freyja Dean. Yeah, we did. Yeah, so people can look through our catalog as well on YouTube and Facebook and podcast apps and whatnot. Okay, so we also got something else I want to mention real quick is this upcoming Keith Emerson release, Keith Emerson Variations. And this is a 20 CD box set coming out October 13th. I see this listing on Cherry Red Records, so cherryred.co.uk. And this is a 20 CD set with a 48-page book. It divides the life of Keith Emerson in 5 parts, beginning with his early years in the Nice NDLP, and it moves into his solo albums, his soundtracks and collaborations. It finally ends with a set of stunning live performances which present his breathtaking keyboard skills to full effect. So that's a nice set to have from the sounds of it. Yeah, I'm just like scrolling through, and yeah, there's like a lot here. Like definitely check that out. Keith Emerson was one of the great keyboardists of prog rock, was very influential. So yeah, I'm really glad that that's coming out. Speaking of keyboardists, just a reminder that Patrick Moraz is going to be at ProgStock in October. I think that's October 8th, if I'm not mistaken. Hang on. Yeah, that's... Okay, yeah, Sunday, October 8th. So very excited to find out like what that's like, after the fact and whatnot. Then we have Rick Wakeman. So he also posted on his YouTube channel talking about a song from his recent album, A Gallery of Imagination. It's titled Behind the Tracks, The Dinner Party. So I'm curious about whether he's going to do more of these behind the tracks thing. And he also posted a promo for this collection called The Prog Years 1973 to 77. So yeah, that has like a bunch of familiar releases and such, and people can check that out. So yeah, go to Rick Wakeman's YouTube channel. And there's also an interesting article I saw about him unveiling a train dedicated to Radio Caroline. So people may or may not be familiar with that. There's a lot of history with Radio Caroline. It's very interesting. Like, I definitely recommend like looking that up. It's like, yeah, it's really fascinating stuff right there. But moving on to Oliver Wakeman. So Oliver Wakeman's band was supposed to perform at the Summer's End Festival next month. They were going to play stuff from his upcoming solo album Anamkara, as well as material from Yes's From a Page, and maybe there were a couple other solo things as well. I can't remember off the top of my head, but due to bereavement of an immediate family member affecting a member of that band, they had to bow out of the Summer's End Festival, but they will be playing at the Winter's End Festival in April. So taking their place for the Summer's End Festival is a band called Karnataka. I'm not very familiar with them, but apparently like people are very interested in them, very supportive, and of course, with the family situation, whichever band member it is, we wish you well, and you and your family. And yeah, so there's a good reason for them to not perform this soon. Like, there needs to be time, and eventually they'll perform at Winter's End Festival in April. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And while we're on the subject of these festivals, Stephen Lamb, who's involved, we've had Stephen Lamb on the show before, along with Dave Watkinson, talking about Yes in the 1980s. And Stephen Lamb, Sonic Bond Publishing, also put out a revised edition of Yes on Track. Let me make sure this is in frame. So yeah, every album, every song, and as you can see on the cover, if you're watching the video, it goes up to Mirror to the Sky. So this is a very brisk looking read, only around 160 pages. So this will be a quick read. I haven't gone through the whole thing yet, but I looked at a few bits, and it looks like he analyzes each of the tracks from like every Yes track from every album, providing his thoughts on each of them. So I'm very curious to see how our opinions line up or differ. That's a fun thing when it comes to Yes fans. And we're gonna have him on our show toward the end of October, and we're also gonna have Kevin Mulrine on our show to talk about the Tormato story and Tormato itself at the end of this month on the 30th. So yeah, we'll be posting about those as they get closer. And I know that Yes in the 1990s by Simon Barrow. It's supposed to come out sometime in the near future. I remember seeing somewhere that it would come out toward the end of September, but then I saw somewhere that said January. So I guess point is follow Sonic Bond Publishing and Stephen Lamb, and keep an eye out for when there's more news on that. In the meantime, Yes on Track is out in the UK, and it comes out in the US October 25th, which just so happens to be Jon Anderson's birthday. So yeah, many thanks to Stephen Lamb for sending this. But speaking of Jon Anderson, just last week on the 13th, I attended another Zoom Q&A over on his Patreon. I'm on the $10 tier, so I was able to go to this one that is for all of his patrons. And I'm just going to mention a few things. So he played a little bit of a new song for about 10 seconds, and then he was like, and that's all you get. And I really hope that I'm able to recognize whatever this song is when it eventually does come out, so I can be like, oh, this is that song. But we'll just have to see. He talked about the summer tour with the Paul Green Rock Academy and thought that they performed very well. They even, I think this was at the Zappa Festival, the band put a song like as a tribute to the late I hope I don't mispronounce the name here. Yeah, I really don't want to mispronounce her first name, but her last name is O'Connor, and she passed away earlier this year. And I guess this was a song written by Prince, according to someone else on the call. But yeah, it's really nice that they paid tribute to her. And Jon also praised the Band Geeks. So, it's really great that he's able to perform with both of these groups, in my opinion. Because I think there is room for both of them, And then, you get different feels with each of them. And I think they're both very valid, and people are loving these performances. You also he's trying to figure out what to do with Zamran now that it's 4 hours of music, the best way to put that out. And he talked about work with Opus Opus and the surround sound of that. He talked about how he listens to Rachmaninoff Piano 3 while walking, and recently listened to Opus Opus during a walk, and it felt like a dream. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just scrolling through my notes that I have here. Let's see. He talked about, like some very, world related stuff, how like we need to share the world collectively, and he sings about that on Opus Opus. He mentioned the Katsi movies, and how he recalled seeing Koyaanis's Katsi in IMAX with Vangelis, apparently. And he talked about Vangelis and provided updates on his kids, and he talked about State of Independence and how it's one of his favorite songs, and told a story about how easy it was to play all at once. And he talked about how Jonathan Elias has, in the past sent him music and he just starts singing. He also talked a bit about the process and tensions during Big Generator. He talked a little bit about Jean-Luc Ponty, and let's see. Oh, he talked about Jane and how she loves being on tour with him. Uh, oh, someone brought up a Peter Newman quote about how, like, we don't stop playing because we grow old because we stop playing. And someone mentioned this song that was brought up in a Rolling Stone interview, about it was a song called Counties and Countries. Like, John mentioned this in an interview, and apparently it was recorded, like, or I don't know if it was recorded or if it was worked on, but it was something that he wanted to do with Yes 20 years ago. So um, I'd have to look at that interview again, but I feel like he probably wants to do something with it. So I guess we'll just have to see. He also, so my question for him was what his favorite Close to the Edge lyrics are. Like, what's his favorite bit? Because, the day that this was on the 51st anniversary of Close to the Edge. So I figure I might as well ask him that. And I also showed him a picture of my dog, Elias. And so John said that his favorite lyrics on Close to the Edge was the bit where he's like, I get up, I get down, 2 million people barely satisfied. Because, it gets into the whole thing of, there's lots of stuff going on with people, and it's just so heavy, and like everyone is like kind of in their own thing. So I thought it was really cool that, uh, it connected to this larger conversation that was going on in the Q&A about how people need to be kinder to each other, essentially. And there are a few other things in this Zoom conversation that I'm purposely not mentioning because I feel like it's stuff he probably wants to keep as a surprise. So I'm just holding off on those. But yeah, it's really fun being part of these conversations with Jon and seeing people who are also fans and the questions that they come up with. And while we're at it, let's look at Jon's YouTube channel, the recent uploads on there, because there have been a bunch lately. Let's see. Let's see. There's a State of Independence, like I mentioned earlier. Elias Space Odyssey looks like a bit of 2001, but with the beginning of Elias of Santillo set to a scene. Got Under the Sun, Now and Again, which is the song from 1000 Hands Chapter 1 that had Steve Howe playing. Michael Franklin talked a bit about how that happened when we interviewed him. Midnight Cello, but this is from the Angels Embrace album, but this is a dream mix, so it sounds a bit different. It starts out sounding like a lower note to my ears, and there's like some, if we listen to both these versions like back to back, you see the differences. There's some stuff he did with Tommy Calton. There's I Believe It, Love Is Everything. I see that he put Clouds from Survival and Other Stories, which is a very, when I listen to that one, it really gets to me, it just gets me really emotional. You Are the Oneness of Being, which I believe he posted on his YouTube channel a while ago as well, but perhaps a different video. There are a few of these I'm pretty sure he's posted a while before, but the one that really fascinated me recently was Building, which he did with Jimmy Hahn. I remember he played that recording to some of us on a Zoom call back in June, and so I'm really glad to see it surfaced here. So it's a really beautiful sounding song. So yeah, go to the Jon Anderson YouTube channel and check that out. Trying to see if I got everything there. Let's see. Just bear with me, everyone. We're almost at the end. Okay. Yeah, I think that's everything for that. Now, onto Trevor Horn's YouTube channel. That channel has been posting performances from the 2004 Princess Trust concert, which featured many guests involved in Trevor Horn's producing career. And more recently, the channel has posted Yes's performances of Cinema, Make It Easy, and Owner of Lonely Heart. Now, Make It Easy, of course, being just the Trevor guitar solo, Trevor Rabin, that is. Yeah, that was a unique lineup at that concert celebrating Trevor Horn. You had Trevor Rabin and Steve Howe, Chris Squire, Jeff Downs, and Alan White. It's such a unique lineup there. And it's cool that these are on Trevor Horn's channel now. But yeah, so I've teased it a bit at the beginning of this, but our guest for tomorrow, if you don't know already, will be Trevor Rabin. Yeah, you know, the film score, Rabbit, solo albums, including Can't Look Away, and a new solo album coming out next month called Rio. So we're going to be talking with him about that. The interview's going to be a little less than a half hour. So, you know, due to, you know, that's how it's going to be. So, yeah, so I'm really excited about that. It's going to be tomorrow, Monday, September 18th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. UK time. And it's going to be huge. I'm sure y'all have listened to the songs that have come out lately, Big Mistake and Push. Push kind of sounds to me a bit more like the stuff on Can't Look Away. Like maybe the song Sorrow, it sounds a bit like that, you know, the soundscape of it. And the music video was pretty trippy, you know, with the giant head and like the cell phone, like very interesting visuals. So I'm very excited for this album and to be able to talk to him about it. So yeah, keep an eye out for when we go live on the Yesshift and Drum Talk TV Facebook pages for that interview. And we'll also post it on YouTube and podcasting apps afterward. So yeah, you can follow us at facebook.com/Yesshift, youtube.com/@Yesshift. And we're also on like the big podcasting apps. Just search Yesshift, and you can email us at yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com and send us feedback or questions, trivia, whatever. And yeah, really glad to have people tuning into this show. So I think that'll do it for this news episode. There's quite a lot to talk about, and yeah, we're not short on all of these music related things, so very exciting stuff. So, yeah, that's it for now, and we'll see you all soon.